Body image is a very complex topic, and we explored the topic once again on our Skinny Legends Only Part 2 episode. And similar to season two's episode of this, once again, it was very polarizing. We got a lot of comments and questions, and I just want to dive right into the first one. So, a listener mentioned that they're happy that someone is finally speaking up about skinny shaming and that everyone experiences body image issues and insecurities regardless of how they look. A listener also wanted to commend Damon on rejecting the idea that non fat people should acknowledge their privilege and went on to note, in quotes, people should get therapy because acknowledging my privilege won't help. Um, I Another thing that I wanted to note on top of this is that we hosted a poll on our Instagram stories, and 86% of those polled agree that it's important to acknowledge their privilege as an able-bodied person. What are our thoughts about this coming out of the episode? Have they changed at all since we recorded and published the episode and heard feedback? Like, what do you guys think in terms of your answer during the episode?
I would say no. I think that I some of the feedback I still think is oversimplifying to complete or conflating and trying to oversimplify a topic. Um, I think it's a very clear point that like privilege exists when you're talking about a system, but when you're speaking of an individual experience, it's individual. And I feel that way in regards to any system, fat phobia, racism, sexism, etc. Um, so yeah, those that I'd stand by what I said, and I'm happy with the balance that I feel like generally this episode had versus what we did the first time. So
What about you, Tony?
Um, I think that for me, like moving forward, like am I always going to be conscious to remember, like if I'm talking about body image, in a room full of people, um, or if I'm even talking to like just one of you guys in a room full of people and someone overhears something, like, am I always going to pick the best choice of words and be like, let me acknowledge that I am able-bodied? Um, I don't know, but I do think that I want to try to be more mindful personally, of the word choice I use and mindful of who I'm around and just be aware in that sense. But I can see what Damon was arguing. I see what the person who sent that feedback, what they're saying. But I think my choice is going to just be like, I want to be mindful, and considerate when I can.
Yeah,
I
I
think both
think
of those
that.
things, sorry. I was just gonna say, I think both of those things exist in tandem. I think that's the part of the conversation that I keep finding to be mildly annoying is that I think that in saying that I'm not talking about privilege with my own relationship, it then means that there isn't thoughtfulness and mindfulness in how I exist with other people. And I think that's what I keep saying over and over is that both of those things can happen at the same time. And both things are situational, I would say, the system and the personal experience.
Yeah, I think that, like, Tony, when you say word choice, like the way that I think about that is just like when I listen back to the episode, I think that we kind of use body image and body shaming interchangeably, and they're not
Hmm.
interchangeable. To Damon's point, and the point that he's been making since season two, is that body image is how you view yourself, what you see in the mirror when you look in the mirror, and no one outside of yourself can say what that is, or validate that. Body shaming is something that you experience from external factors. So I think that when I think about my point of view, I think I want to just be a little bit more specific in my word choice. That I think that when we're talking about body shaming and we're talking about society and we're talking about the system, I do think
Hmm.
that people who benefit from privileged body types should recognize that. And
Yeah.
also that word choice difference of like recognize versus acknowledge. I don't think that you need to like say I have privilege, but recognizing that you have privilege and then allowing that to sort of guide the way in which you interact with other people who may be
Hmm.
experiencing other body shaming other levels of body shaming, I think is important. So it's just really, I think I think it's a very new topic in the way that we're talking about it. And I think that, to Devon's point, yes, it's a lot of conflation happening between the two ideas. And I think that as soon as we create like clear distinctions between self idea of body image and external factors of how your body is being received and, you know,
Yeah.
talked about is important to like comprehending this topic.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm actually about to just jump into the hot seat now because there was a comment that came in specifically to me. So there was a point in the conversation where the topic of bulimia and anorexia came up. And a listener had a question for me, which says, Jordan's comment about bulimia, anorexia came off as a bit careless. Do you all believe as your platform grows, you have a responsibility to make sure you're informed about a topic before making public statements regarding it? So I want to respond to the first part, which is the careless part. And for people who did not listen to the episode and curious what we're talking about, I posed a question during the podcast asking, how often is anorexia or bulimia a result of fat phobia or the fear of gaining weight? That was the question that I posed. And I apologize that came off careless or negligent in the way that, it was asked. I genuinely came from a place of curiosity. And I think that I think that it's a pretty common question to associate eating disorders with, issues with weight. So I didn't think that when I was asking that question that I was hitting a sensitive button per se. So I apologize for that. But I think in terms of doing the research before we talk about a topic, absolutely. I think that the three of us can all say that we are firm believers in researching a topic and getting an understanding of it. But also, we've said it from the day that we came out into this season. We know a lot, but we don't know it all. So I don't think the expectation is going to be that, any topic that we're talking about, we're going to become experts on it before we discuss it. Some of these things we're working with our current level of knowledge, and all we can do is try to have these conversations with as much care and nuance as possible. But that's sort of my take on like speaking on topics that we're not fully informed on ourselves. What do you guys think about that latter part of our platform and being informed?
Yeah, I think that as you mentioned, when we approach these topics, there is a level of research that we're going to do. But in no way, shape, or form are we experts. In no way, shape, or form are we saying we're experts. We're just bringing these conversations to the forefront, which I think is there's some risk with that, and I think that that's the risk that we take, but. I don't know. I think that it's a teachable moment. Also, when we record and we get feedback from people, it's an opportunity for us to learn from what our listeners have to say and acknowledge or recognize when we get something wrong. And I love that because it allows us to grow, and that's what makes it a full circle moment for me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much to add. I just think like we're not the type of podcast just like fuck what y'all say, we said what we said. Like that's not our vibe and not necessarily what we're trying to do. And I believe we're trying to grow our platform in a way that is do I want to say that? Whatever. Is bigger than is bigger than just being able to like jump on a mic and spew anything out. Like that's not what we do. That's not what we set out to do. And I think that in the moments where like we tumble through some words and we listen back or somebody listens back like, girl, maybe not. Like, I think that we're humble enough to like receive that. And then, especially when we're talking about like the especially the more serious episodes, dating. I'm not dating. Why did I say dating?
It's serious for some people, child.
Right. Sexual health, et cetera, et cetera. The ones that it's more than just like the key episodes. So that's all.
Yeah. And if we could have had an eating disorder specialist on the podcast, I would have loved to ask them that question because
next season.
Season 4. All right. And the last piece of feedback that I want to touch on comes from a listener who wants to commend us for revisiting the topic that they feel doesn't get enough attention. And they wanted to also commend us on continuing to bring awareness to the disproportionate societal backlash that fat people experience versus other body types. So I don't know if you guys have any reactions to that, but that was something that, came up. I think that we kind of talked about it earlier in the sound off.
Yeah, I mean, my only reaction to that is just from that person's point of view. What I think they're trying to say is like, yes, body skinny shaming does exist, but maybe consider from a societal standpoint that fat people or like they experience a different type of backlash that is by far and large a lot worse. And from the outside in, like I can see what they're trying to say there, but acknowledge that both do exist.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to say, like, going through these three things, like, these are three very different points of view on the episode. And I mean it when I say that this is probably the one episode where I felt like word choice was so important and so critical to sort of understanding the topic and being able to have the conversation in an accurate way. So I'm very happy that this has, led me to actually look up body image, the definition, and body shame in the definition, and decide and know what the difference is and how to give language to this topic. But yeah, on that note, thanks for sharing in this experience with us again on Surface Level Sound Off. Please keep listening and letting us know your thoughts. New season 3 episodes premiere each Wednesday. And until then, I guess we'll just holler at you later.
Peace.
Peace. Why did I do a thumbs up? Don't know.
Peace.